I think we can all agree that a win is a win, whether it be at 1 life or at 20, you still got there at the end. Life totals do matter, especially in the commander format where you have double that of a constructed environment. And a lot of people tend to make weird blocks or weird moves in combat that leave them at a lot lower than they want to be. Ultimately, when you cast a Craterhoof Behemoth, you do still end up losing by an insurmountable amount. So it almost feels like, does the life even matter? You would have had to gotten to such a crazy amount of life that the Craterhoof Behemoth is just near infinite anyway. And that's the topic I'm hoping to discuss today. Deck Driver MTG poses a video talking about how life isn't a resource in relation to the commander format, and I think there are some truths to that, but there might just be some wide misconceptions because, again, winning at 1 life is the same thing as winning at 20, and you should be using the tools that you have at your fingertips to leverage a win. No, your life total isn't a resource. Okay, gotta hit it with a like. I haven't watched Deck Driver in a minute, but let's see. That'll subscribe.
Oftentimes in Commander, you have probably heard the phrase.
Whoa, hold on. Okay, first of all, my speaker's going, whoa, this font though. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like my mini OCD is kicking in. This font is awful. This is not your fault, but you notice how everything's like boxed into its own quadrant. So the gap between the lower part of the Y and the O does seem so much farther than the O and the U. And it almost feels like because of that, the spacing between the R and the L, look at this spacing. Everything is in its own little quadrant box and not like shifted together appropriately. This is a horrible font. Oh my God, this is going to piss me off the whole video. Deck Driver, this is not your fault. You just got to pick a new font. This is a terrible. Who made this font?
My life total is a resource, or your life total is a resource and you should use it as such. I'm here to tell you that not only is that not the case, but also that it is losing you commander games.
Okay, so objectively, this is wrong. Your life total is an extra resource in the game that you have access to because winning at 1 life is the same thing as winning at 20, an old adage for Magic the Gathering. And it is a bargaining tool. It can be used as mana, as an additional cost to things. And I imagine that might be some of what they might be talking about here. I imagine Deck Driver, I'm guessing, probably will start bringing up like MDFCs. I think a lot of people, especially more recently with brackets and Modern Horizon 3, like had to explore deck building in a different way. And MDFCs have been a big way that I've made improvements to my decks. And yes, you are losing a lot of life for them, but the optionality for that in general is great. I like in my monocolor decks just having net more spells in it that can act as lands. I find honestly even the tapped MDFCs are a great way to power up your lower power decks, like increase your land count but also increase your spell count. They're cheating in that sense. So I imagine that'll be a common thing that they bring up, or maybe blocking like improperly. But regardless, like if you think about the way that the average commander game is won, it's probably through some type of combat shenanigans, maybe someone attacking a little bit here and there. But once you like level up, play, I would say high bracket 3. I definitely play high bracket 3. Like when it comes to the brackets, like I try and push myself to the extreme. If I'm in that bracket, I push it up. If I'm bracket 3, I'm maxing out on game changers all the time. That's just how I play. I'm maxing out on the game changers. I'm min-maxing it as much as possible within reason of that bracket, right? I don't want to go overboard where like, oh, fetches are technically allowed. I'm playing 10 fetches in my bracket 3. No. Like, but I am maxing out on certain things. Even with bracket 4, I'm maxing out on as much as possible, approaching CDH. Obviously, you can't. That's a whole different ideology. But when it comes to stuff like that, you start to realize that in these type of games, people just win absolutely. And it's not just about like Thassa's Oracle wins. It's Craterhoof Behemoth, where the point where like the damage is like each player is going to be taking like 80 damage with trample on each one of these creatures, right? Like, how are you blocking that, right? So it becomes situations like this where like your life is a resource because you're going to lose whether you have 40 life or you're at 1 life. Of course, if you're gaining life, you're a life gain deck, you're in a Laurel Crap Lord, and you're at like 200 life, the game's a little bit different, and you're allowed to then survive a Torment of Hailfire at whatever amount of mana. But games these days, I find in my experience of Commander games, and this is where it's subjective, is that you lose absolutely in such a high number of life is lost at a time that I don't find myself losing incrementally too much anymore. It happened the other day, actually. I was playing with couple of friends, couple of old content creators, and we did actually end up losing that way. I was at like 11 life, someone was at 13, someone was at 5, and then it ended up being some like massacre girl shenanigans that killed the board and dealt damage based on a record. So that was fun, sure. But even the turn before we lost that, I had to go for a win and I whiffed. So it's pretty much like I accepted the fact that because I didn't win the game here, I lost the game, right? Like again, I was trying to win at 11 life. I was trying to win at that 1 life versus kind of winning at 20. I accepted the loss there. So I think this might be a little
having this mentality. There are so many times where I've heard someone just take 5 or even 10 damage and say, this is okay. My life total is a resource. There are plenty of times where people have just said, my life total is a resource, so I'm perfectly fine.
Holy crap, this font is so garbage. Oh my god, deck driver, please change that. What is this? But like this looks like one word. Oh my god, deck driver, please change this font. There's no spacing in between this. The spacing between the C and A looks the same as the I. I'm sorry. I'm just
with paying 5 life in order to do X removal or X spell to go through. It doesn't make any sense when you really think about it. The phrase my life total is a resource is often used and said in Commander or in constructed 60 card formats. The biggest difference is that in constructed 60 card formats,
if you're losing to Commander damage in 2025, I might judge you.
You have 20 life, and every life that you have matters. There's no such thing as commander damage, and the closest thing you have to something like that is infect. And since every single point matters, there are often times where, yes, trading for life in order to accelerate your game plan that much further is worth it in a 60 card format. Shock lands or pain lands or any bolt lands are worth it, but they have to make a certain trade because most games in 60 card formats are ending by turn 5, 6, and sometimes even 7. Now, of course, if you're playing something like Domain Overlords or a control deck, it might be a lot longer, but in those cases, those control decks are still trying to keep themselves as healthy as possible so that they can get to that point in the first place, which is why it would make sense to say that their life is a resource. Now,
okay, but that's the same thing in Commander, though. If anything, your life is more of a resource. It allows you to pay larger increments of that life or shorter increments of that life. Whereas like, a Shockland comes in that is, 1/10 of your life total or whatever. I don't know, however you want to think about it. Like it is a fraction of a fraction of the life total that you have. Whereas that Shockland coming in a 40 life format is even lower of a cost. It is still a cost, right? It is still a resource that you're using to put out an untapped land versus having that tapped out. You can keep your Unholy Heat up with your graveyard stacked. Like you can hold up the Brainstorm plus the counter spell, end step Brainstorm. Okay, like don't hit me with the semantics of an end step versus a main step Brainstorm. I'm just trying to use an instant speed draw spell here. But regardless, you having that untapped mana versus not, and it informs different decisions and opinions that your opponent might have of you. Especially if you're in a table where you've played with these players like a repeat amount of times. Maybe if you're in a blank table, that might not happen. But if you're in a play group with a repeat amount of times, if you're the black player and you have plenty of removal, if you're the blue player and you have plenty amount of counter spells, untapped mana has to be respected. That has to be something that they keep in mind. So that is just a simple way that life becomes a resource to create that information barrier for
my biggest drawback to why I don't think life total is a resource in something like Commander is simply because in Commander there are so many ways where one board state can go from seemingly useless to a lethal board state with one spell cast. Or
okay, but you see what I mean? You're using Craterhoof Behemoth specifically because that's an insurmountable amount. It becomes such an on average, people aren't gaining that much life per game. That's not an average experience. Like life gain is actually a small fraction of the format. People aren't gaining life like that. Craterhoof Behemoth is lethal on so many boards for so many reasons. And in many ways, Constructed is like this too. There are many situations where boards become insurmountable, right? Like you have something like a Murktide Regent. All of a sudden you play a second Murktide Regent, that first Murktide becomes near lethal. You fetch Shocker at 17, the Murktide's, coming at you for 8 damage. You play another one. Like there's so much happening in a board of in a board of constructed that, depending on the format, a lot of it is tempo based, a lot of it is big swings. I mean, a lot of it is just like insurmountable to the average eye. Like even in Legacy, if you look at something like Legacy Eldrazi, one of the big tempo swings that prevents blue decks from being in the format is a lot of blue decks will play like blue based strategies. Control decks will play basics along with non-basics. They'll play wastelands as well. The problem is that you have something like Sowing Mycospawn, which you can pay for 6, make it uncounterable with something like a Cavern of Souls, and then play out with your soul lands and fast mana. All of a sudden, Sowing Mycospawn allows you to exile a land, which is the basic. Then it can tutor up for a wasteland, which destroys the non-basic. And all of a sudden, this uncounterable threat that you can no longer daze, forcible, anything, has exiled 2 of your lands and put you back so far. That's a win. I hope y'all understand. They could still be at 30 life. The Eldrazi player could be at 10, but that is functionally a win. All right, like if you only have 4 lands out, the Eldrazi player has just destroyed 2 of yours. That's a win. That's not a visible win in terms of life total, but it is a type of swing where an advantage can be created instantaneously over a large spell being cast. And that just might be the nature of spells these days, but this happens in Constructed. It is in the same way. It happens in so many ways. And a lot of these cards that create these type of advantages, a lot of people see they want them to be banned. I'm not saying Craterhoof should be banned. I'm not, whatever about Sowing Mycospawn, but just highlighting that you're specifically using Craterhoof here. And that example still stands true in Constructed. You don't have incremental wins all the time. Some decks do that, but sometimes you just play out a Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury out of your graveyard. You played that with an Arena of Glory, and all of a sudden your board that you felt like you were fine with, they slam Arena of Glory, exert it, give the Flage haste. All of a sudden you take the 3, they attack, you take 3 more. They've helixed you for 6. They've created a 12-point life swing. Then they hit you with 6 more. You've taken 12 damage, and then at that point an 18-point life swing, all in one turn. That's like game ending if you don't have a blocker for that. And so again, like all these type of things happen in Constructed. Big plays like this are very important in all formats of Magic.
Maybe even 2 spell casts. The amount of life total swings and the amount of swinging out and cracking back in Commander is way more threatening and way more lethal than it is in a 60 card constructed format.
That's not
60 card formats are usually known because you know exactly what the other person's running. Typically there are net decks or there are certain archetypes in the actual format itself, in which case I know in certain matchups I can use my life total a little bit more sparingly than if I'm against something like a mono red deck. It doesn't make any sense for me to allow the mono red deck to deal a ton of damage to me if I know I'm not.
This is the same type of okay, but see, this is not true though. Okay, all right, okay, and I hope this gets addressed, because again, I'm not trying to fight Deck Driver. We're just simply trying to address this video. Okay, so I'm not trying to spread beef with Deck Driver. Shout out to the content. My man makes good content. Change the font, please. But okay. This still happens in Commander because you sit across from someone, you see their commander. You will likely have a rule 0 conversation with them. Every single time I play Commander, I sit down and have a rule 0 conversation with them and be like, my deck does this. What does your deck do? What is the general type of thing that I could be expecting? Are you keeping it a secret? Okay, I'm going to keep mine a secret. Okay, cool. Like, you can generally look at a commander and have an idea of what's going on, unless they're doing something completely random. They're playing like 5-color Phage secret commander. Sure, then it's surprising, but you can judge a commander and generally decide what's happening there as well. In Constructed, it's actually worse. You don't know if you need to take these resources. All of a sudden, you fetch Shock Thoughtseize and your opponent goes Mountain Goblin Guide. And yeah, the Burn versus Death Shadow matchup is a really interesting one. It's very, very interesting because the Burn player needs to destroy you all at once or almost not at all, because the last thing you need is that Death Shadow swinging back at you with the TBR, and all of a sudden Double Strike Trample is like hitting you for lethal always from Sunday. But you don't know that in Constructed. That just comes out of nowhere unless open deck lists are a thing. If you just head into FNM, you don't know what your opponent's playing. So you have to make these resource judges. You have to go fetch shock, whatever. You have to go fetch into a basic. Like, you have to make these decisions. Your deck has to have a baseline game plan that takes some amount of resources. And in older formats with fetches, these are the things that you have to work with. In Legacy, maybe a little bit less so because you have the unshocked duels. But in Modern, this is a constant decision you have to make around fetching and shocking. Are you holding up that fetch? Are you then saving that fetch so you could get like a surveil land, like stuff like that? It's the same thing in Commander.
Not going to be able to stabilize until turn 5 or 6. Whereas I know I can do that against a more mid-range matchup or a more combo matchup. It's the same thing as an aggro deck. As an aggro deck, I don't care how much damage I'm taking because I know I'm going to be able to kill my opponent before.
See, I read this as a me hit the ace before the, like the F and the A. Who wrote this?
Where they can kill me. Commander doesn't have to deal with any of these concepts, but it's also why I'm saying that this phrase, my life total is a resource, does not translate over to Commander. Do you know how many games are won by using a Crater Hoof Behemoth? My board of 9 1/1s that are seemingly useless, I get one Worldly Tutor and cast a Crater Hoof, or I cast one Natural Order and Crater Hoof comes onto the battlefield uncounterable. My completely useless board state is now a lethal threat on any player. And now when these players have not worried about their life total.
Okay, what do you mean a healthy life total? Okay, hold on. Okay, let's back it up here.
Not worried about their is now a
okay, all right. Let's work it through with the crowd here. Crater Behemoth enters the battlefield. When Crater Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So 10 creatures. That means each creature you control is going to gain +10/+10 and trample. You have a 15/15 with trample. You have a 10/10 with trample, 10/10 with trample, 10/10 with trample. Blah, blah, blah. You have pretty much 100 damage on board. A little bit over, whatever. You have 100 damage on board with trample. But how are people's life totals healthy? How are people's life totals healthy? What are you talking about? How is this not a win? Why would you go for a win with Crater Hoof Behemoth when it's not a win? If you go for Crater Hoof Behemoth as a win, if your opponent's life totals are healthy, you wouldn't go for the win. And if they're lower, yes, you go for the win, but that doesn't mean what they did at the time wasn't incorrect. Why? Like, I'm not going to play my game expecting the Crater Hoof to come at me out of nowhere. I'm playing my game to the point where I can answer the Crater Hoof Behemoth if I'm a good Commander player. Because now we're just talking about bad Commander players. I will play the interaction. I will work around that. And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to spend my resources and my life playing out my shocks, playing out my cards, playing out my, 3 mana sorcery that loses me 2 life and draws me 2 cards like out of black. Like, I'm still playing those cards, but then I'm having enough mana open to hold up my Doomblade effect or hold my black counter spell that no one's expecting, holding up my Drown in the Lock, whatever it is. I am doing all this with the expectation that something like Crater Hoof, something big coming down can hit me, right? I'm playing it with the board wipe. If I see a green deck just building out a giant board of Saprolings, like, I'm playing the board wipe. Like, I don't know what the argument is here. Like, I'm playing in a way where I can expect these things and still going about my resources. Does this mean that I'm not going to do anything? I'm not going to play the spells that lose me life, or I'm just going to play them less often? No, because that just means I haven't built my deck right. I don't know.
Lethal threat on any player. And now when these players have not worried about their life total, they've used their quote unquote life as a resource, they're now at 20 life and I win the game. Whereas if they were a bit more healthy and they were a bit more worried about how low their life total gets, I can maybe only kill 1 or 2 of them, which means another player still has a chance to win the game. I'm simply saying this because a lot of times people are very careless with their life total and they don't care to stay healthy during a Commander game. They're fine with taking 3 damage here or there. They're fine.
Not chump blocking. This is situational. Pain lands. I don't agree with this. If you need colored mana to cast your spells, you need colored mana to cast your spells. I don't agree with this one. Not chump blocking is situational. Life as an additional cost. So as an additional cost to cast this, you pay 3 life. Like, I'm pretty sure the card's fine. Keep ping effects around and poor threat assessment. This kind of goes together. This is just universal. I don't think this is about this isn't really about your life total. This is just poor threat assessment altogether. Like this and your life total not being these are just different things. This is a different concept. Commander players on average are just poor at threat assessment. They're just poor at threat assessment. And not understanding what's good and what isn't. Like Orcish Bowmasters keeping that around, which is fine. Honestly, the Orcish Bowmaster's net total is probably fine if you're not drawing a lot of cards. Heck, if you're making other people draw a lot of cards, the Orcish Bowmasters is lit. As long as you have something going on with that player. Say, hey, I'll keep that around as long as you don't point that Orcish Bowmasters at me. That's it. That's all you got to do. Politicking too hard, not hard enough? What? What is that even? Okay.
With taking 5 damage. They're fine with, I'm not going to block because I don't want to lose my resources. Which leads to a lot of mistakes where just because you have 40 life, that doesn't mean anything. 40 life or even full health in a 60 card constructed format is relatively healthy. And you're not usually going to just get from one turn nothing to another turn 20 damage straight to your face. But in something like Commander, which is so spiky and so Timified, you're going to get an overrun out of nowhere. You're going to get...
Yeah, but again, the overrun is like the same thing. Like, the overrun does such an overwhelming amount of damage that it's just gonna, like, why would you play an overrun if you're not gonna win the game with it? Like, yeah, Beastmaster's Ascension, I get, you're gonna try and build that up over time, but like, why would you go for Craterhoof Behemoth if you're not in a desperate situation or you don't have the win? Why would you go? Like, it's just an I win button. You tutor for it when you have the win. It doesn't matter what the life totals are. An opponent could be at 100 life. You're gonna put yourself in a position where that Craterhoof is lethal. Right? I don't know.
Master Ascensioned, you're going to get Crater Hoofed, and you're going to lose 50 health in one turn. Crackle with Power will destroy any table if they're even the least bit unhealthy. Torment of Hailfire, a big spell, is going to get you if you're just the least bit unhealthy, especially when it comes down to the wire in something like Commander and you have taken a little bit and a little bit and a little bit over and over and over again. You now put your head up and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm only at 25 life. On turn 8 or 9, when the game has stalled out a little bit and you're at 25 life, 20 life, 15 life, it is really easy to take you out as a player.
Okay, no, we're on turn 9 of the game. That's okay. The game's got to end. End it. This is a bet. Okay. Okay, Deck Driver, I got to give it to you. I think what you're trying to say makes sense. I think there are situations where people are being too aggressive with the amount of life they're losing. I think the examples you're using aren't working here. Turn 8, turn 9, the game needs to end. Come on. Let's have people trying to go for a win. I hate this pillow fort, people trying to build an iron wall fortress type of gameplay. Like, ultimately, you do need to interact. We're not rolling dice to see who to attack. Just freaking make a choice. Make a choice and attack someone. Like, people have no conviction whatsoever. They're too upset at trying to get other people mad. It's not a problem. Everyone's here to play the game. If someone salts off, let them screw off. All right, like, those aren't people meant to play this game. They're just mad at something else in the game, mad at something else in their real life, and they're bringing it to you in the game. Like, swing at someone. Make concerted decisions, set yourself in the win. I'm not saying like you need to make yourself public enemy number 1. You don't need to be the arch enemy. You need to make decisions towards winning the game. And if over the course of 8 to 9 turns, you have lost some amount of life, 20 life, making decisions, blocking, taking combat damage, that's fine. You should not be at 40 life after like 9 turns. What is going on at the table? Unless you're gaining life, what is going on at the table?
But it's not so easy when they're trying to swing out for the game and they have one player at 40 life and the rest of the table at 20 life because they've been irresponsible. Who do you think they're going to take out? Probably 2 players instead of 1, which still gives you a chance to stay in the game. So because of this, my whole point of this video is to try to stay as healthy as possible. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to add cards that help you gain life over time, like Authority of the Consuls or Soul Warden or Essence Warden, but it definitely isn't something you shouldn't think about. Having some sort of increment.
Shout out to Essence Warden against the Krenko players.
To life gain that can happen throughout a game is really good, especially if your deck can trigger it multiple times a game.
Right. Gotta get the ads in. Sorry, folks. I'm not on a YouTube ad-free account here. My mouse.
Something like a Soul Warden or an Essence Warden is that good because every single player just actively playing the game allows you to keep your life total healthy. And especially if you have a token deck and somebody else has a token deck, you're going to be very healthy throughout a game. Something in black that you can use is Blood Artist, which is really nice. Blue doesn't really have any kind of life gain effects that allow you to stay healthy throughout the game, but blue is very good at making tokens or just stopping people from attacking you in the first place. And red, of course, being the most aggressive color, it's going to be difficult for them to ward people off. But if you're in red, in most cases, you're able to actually use your life total somewhat as a resource because you're trying to kill them faster than they can kill you.
But see, in the same way that red uses life as a it's the same thing though. It's the same thing. In the same way that red is able to use their life as a resource to forward their game state, Every other color can do this. Every single other color can do this. It's all about deck construction. It's all about your commander. It's all about how you play. It's all about how you politic.
Now, let's talk about when your life total actually is a resource in Magic the Gathering. In most cases, you're only going to see this concept actually be put in play in something like CEDH. In casual games, you're almost never going to see a Necropotence, and you're almost never...
But these, this is the literal definition of it. When people say your life is a resource, they're not actually referring to this. These are literally cards that say you pay life that equates into cards. Like that, okay. These, I think this is taking the definition a little too literally.
We're going to see an ad nauseum, and you're not really going to see any of these kind of decks that really care about using as much life as possible to get as much card advantage as possible in order to help win the game. Here is my total thought process about this entire concept. Unless you actively paying your life in order to further your game plan is a key part of your strategy, your life total is not really a resource. That is why something...
No, but see, you said, unless it's forwarding your game plan, every single time you pay life, every single time, it is forwarding your game plan. Of course, I will caveat this by saying people will do this carelessly. They will play their MDFC untapped for no reason. Like, oh, I didn't need to play that on top, whatever, I just have it open. They actually only needed 2 mana open, not 3. Those are situations, correct. Opponents are being a little bit too careless. Sure, they're piling it wrong. Every single card you play should advance your game plan. And I'm not saying it should take down your opponent's life, it should ramp you, whatever. Some things will draw you cards. Some things will just play an extra land out. Something will allow you, like some things you do will just allow you to get some mana back to hold up more cards to play at end steps of opponents. Every single card that you put down, play, cast, reanimate, whatever, is advancing your board state, is advancing your way to win. Every single land drop you make. We know classically, especially from the old videos of the command zone that they did on their stats and all that stuff. I remember that video was really good, where on average, people with the most amount of mana just won the game. So on average, you just make a land drop every turn, you ramp, you are forwarding your game plan. And if some of that ramp makes you lose life, you are still forwarding your game plan. Everything you do is doing that. If you're just making nonsensical decisions of like, oh, I'm just going to attack this person because, why? Don't do that. You're just making an enemy out of something. Of course, unless you need to get a damage trigger in, unless you need to get an attack trigger in, dealing damage to them allows you to do something. It puts them below a threshold so you can do this. Like, that makes sense. But if you're winning all at once, why do that? Of course, if you're winning over time, you're more combat focused, you're not playing the Craterhoof Behemoth, sure, get some attacks in. That's still forwarding your game plan. This is about piloting. If you're just trying to amass a giant board, you're going to Craterhoof and just win the game. Okay, whatever. Sure, you can get some attacks in. You probably don't need to. But if you're just going to win all at once with something like a Phage, the Untouchable, why are you attacking in at all? You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing incremental amounts of damage with your Cryptghast? Don't attack with your Cryptghast. Don't let the white player play the card that says destroy target tapped creature, destroy target attacking creature. Why are you attacking with that? Phage just says when it deals combat damage, target person, like whoever you dealt damage to, loses the game. You know what I mean? Like, this is just pilot error. Everything you do forwards the game plan.
Like Necropotence, Necrodominance, or Ad Nauseam is considered life as a resource, because you are actively choosing to hinder your life total in order to further your game plan. However, most decks are not doing this. You allowing your shock land or your bolt land to come in untapped is not necessarily the same thing as using a Necropotence in order to draw.
It's not. It's wildly different. You're right. This can be careless if you're not using it. This isn't. But if you need the Sacred Foundry up to have an extra mana to remove something, maybe you have a creature that needs to come in for combat and you feel like your opponent's going to play something that's going to block this, holding this up for some type of red-based, white-based removal spell is then worth it. That's taking 2 damage to forward your game state because you need this creature to attack something. It's not the same thing as Ad Nauseam, but it's still worth it depending on how you use it. If you're using it carelessly and you don't have any need for having it untapped, Deck Driver, you are correct. That is carelessness on the player's part. But if you're holding it untapped for something, if you have a purpose for it, if you believe you are going to cast a spell or respond to something based on how your opponent's play patterns are right now, the 2 damage is worth it.
10 to 15 cards. or allowing a Tymna trigger to deal some damage to you, but you get to draw cards. They are not the same thing. And oftentimes in decks that don't really care too much about these things, usually in CEDH they're going to stay healthy, which is why you usually attack the black player. But in a casual game, having shock lands and bolt lands and any of these pain lands that will deal consistent damage to you is only hurting you. Having these spells.
Okay, shock lands, correct. MDFCs, incorrect. Incorrect. The MDFCs are literally spells in the slots of lands. Incorrect. I will hard disagree on the MDFCs. If you are playing monocolored, I think 95% of the time, unless you're going for a specific theme, you should be playing the MDFCs. Play the untapped MDFCs. They are literally spells. They help you make your land drops as well. And if they're not making land drops, they're just a spell in your hand. Play the MDFCs. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be playing the MDFCs unless you are trying to orient to a specific commander where it doesn't synergize with those cards, or you have a specific theme that you're going for, or something like that. The shocklands, I can understand. A casual game, you're not gaining as much from a. See, now we're adding caveats though. See, this is the thing, deck builder. You added a caveat in a casual sense. Sure, play the tap land. Your opponents might, on average, not be as aggressive, but the shocklands in general are still worth it if you're doing something with that untapped mana. So you added a caveat of casual game. The MDFCs are still worth it in that casual game because you can bring them in tapped. They're even more worth it because you can bring them in tapped, or you can keep them around as a spell. The shocklands are worse. If you're not playing fetches, they're worse. But of course, if you're playing multicolor, you're playing 3-4 color decks, 5 color decks, then they are worth it because they act as 2 lands as 1. They are worth it to play.
That do cost life in order to cast them is only hurting you. Allowing other people to get in for damage because you don't want to lose your creatures, or you don't want to make quote unquote enemies in the game, is only hurting you in the long run and losing you more games than it's winning you. The amount of times people win on low health and low life totals is astounding. So imagine if they just allowed some of these things to happen to them in order to lose life. Those situations wouldn't happen.
Okay, so I don't understand what this point says. Okay, so are you saying the amount winning games below 10 health? Okay, oh my god, the font. Jesus, deck driver, please. You're killing me. Just change the font. I think like the way you scripted this in the video is fine. Just change the font, please. Deck driver, I beg you, change the font. This looks like 10 heal, this quite common. Look at it. It literally looks like 10 heal, this quite common. It doesn't look like 10 health. Anyway, it's quite common. Exactly, because life is a resource. Winning games below 10 health is quite common. Exactly. Because life is a resource. You have spent 30 30 life worth of resources and costs to lead yourself to a win, because winning at 10 life is the same as winning at 40.
Some of these things to happen to them in order to lose life. Those situations wouldn't happen nearly as much because they didn't care about staying healthy going into the late game. And that's pretty much all I have for this video. I was planning on uploading this a lot sooner. It's been quite a while since I have posted anything on this channel, and I realized that I've been on a bit of a hiatus, and I was gonna post this earlier, but on the day that I was getting ready to upload and finish this video up, EDH Deck Building actually posted a video very similar to this one. I like a lot of the ideas that he gave, and I agree with most of it. Life totals in something like Commander are not nearly as much of a resource as it is in 60 card formats or in CEDH formats. And so I just wanted to give my 2 cents on this topic and tell you how I thought about this as well. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.
I like the white background. I don't know about this new text thing. I guess it's a new thing you're trying. It's cool. Just change the font. Just change the font. Anyway, I'm not here to beef with Deck Driver. I like your ideas. The few videos that I have watched on your channel, I've generally liked. I disagree with a lot of points on this video. Doesn't mean I think you're a crap person or anything. I'm not trying to just trying to react and do the thing. Regardless, many of you that have watched this video with me, go ahead, leave a like on this video. It's going to be linked down below. Play it in the background so that this video gets a view and gets its worth and time on the algorithm as it should. It's been a minute since Deck Drive was posted, so show them some love so the YouTube algorithm doesn't just throw it away. But regardless, life is a resource. I think we're adding too many caveats in this video. I hope I've outlined enough as to why life is a resource. If not, Deck Driver, feel free. Let's we'd have a bit of back and forth. Maybe we could do a collab. Maybe we could do a video. Someone let me know in the comment section down below. Tag Deck Driver if we should do a collab. together. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Till next time.